The first time I realized my own son wanted me out of my life, I was standing on my front porch with a grocery bag in one hand and my house key in the other. The key wouldn't turn. I tried again, thinking the lock had jammed. Then the front door opened just enough for my son, Ryan, to look at me like I was a stranger. He smiled and said, "Don't bother, Dad. I changed the locks. You won't be needing this house anymore." I wish I could tell you that was the worst part, but it wasn't. The sheriff came later that afternoon, and when he returned with a court order, Ryan's smile disappeared. Before I tell you how everything fell apart, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to Family Betrayal. Stories like mine remind us how quickly family can become strangers. Also, the faces, photos, background footage, and scenes you see are only there to help tell the story. They're meant to bring the memories to life, not show the real people involved. 3 months earlier, my life had been ordinary. I was 68, widowed for almost 7 years, and living in the same Ohio house my wife and I had worked our entire lives to pay off. Every scratch on those hardwood floors carried a memory. Every wall held a piece of our family. I never imagined my own son would one day decide those memories belonged to him instead. Ryan had been struggling after losing his construction job. His wife, Melissa, convinced him they needed a fresh start. When they asked if they could stay with me, for just a couple of months, I didn't hesitate. Their family, I thought. That's what family does. At first, everything felt normal. My grandkids filled the house with laughter. Family dinners came back. For a while, the silence that had haunted me since my wife's death disappeared. I honestly believed I had been given another chance to enjoy my family. But little things started changing. Ryan insisted on paying my utility bills because he claimed it would make things easier. Then he wanted access to my online banking in case something happened to me. Melissa constantly reminded me that the house was too much for someone my age. Every conversation somehow ended with them talking about retirement homes, assisted living, or how peaceful my life could be somewhere else. I laughed it off. Then one afternoon I overheard Melissa whispering in the kitchen. "He'll sign eventually," she said. Ryan answered quietly, "If he doesn't, we'll make him." I stood frozen in the hallway, hoping I'd misunderstood. I wanted to believe my own ears were lying to me. But from that moment on, I started noticing every strange look, every hushed conversation, every document they quickly hid whenever I walked into the room. That's when fear quietly moved into my home, and I had no idea it was only the beginning. I tried convincing myself I was imagining things. Ryan was my son. I had raised him to be honest. I taught him to throw a baseball, helped him buy his first truck, and stood beside him the day he married Melissa. I couldn't accept that he might actually be planning something against me. A few days later, Ryan placed a stack of papers on the kitchen table. "Dad, these are just emergency documents," he said casually. "If you ever end up in the hospital, I'll be able to handle your bills." He pushed a pen toward me. Something didn't feel right. "I'd rather have my attorney look at them first," I replied. His smile disappeared. "Why don't you trust your own son?" That question hit harder than I expected. I almost signed just to avoid the argument. But deep down, my late wife's voice echoed in my mind. She always used to say, "Never sign anything you don't understand." The next morning, while Ryan and Melissa were taking the kids to school, I quietly gathered the papers and drove to my attorney's office. He only needed a few minutes. His face turned pale. "Don't sign these," he said. "These aren't emergency forms. These documents transfer control of your property and financial decisions to your son. If you signed them, you could lose your house without realizing it." I felt sick. I drove home in complete silence. My hands were shaking so badly I had to pull over twice. When I walked inside, Ryan immediately asked where I'd been. I lied for the first time in my life. "Just getting coffee." That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the hallway made me wonder if someone was searching through my room. Every creak of the floor made my heart race. Then something happened that erased every doubt. I woke up around 2 in the morning to get a glass of water. As I passed the living room, I heard Melissa whispering, "We're running out of time." Ryan answered, "The realtor says the market's hot. Once Dad is out, we can sell the place before winter." Melissa laughed softly. "He won't even know what happened." My stomach dropped. They weren't planning for my future. They were planning a future without me. I quietly backed away before they noticed I was listening. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the very first time in my own house. The next morning, I secretly called my attorney again. He told me not to confront them, to gather every document proving I owned the house, and to be prepared because things could get ugly. I had no idea how quickly he would be proven right. Less than 48 hours later, I came home with groceries, and discovered my key no longer fit the front door. I stood on my porch in complete disbelief, staring at the new deadbolt. My groceries slipped from my hand, and a carton of eggs shattered across the steps. I knocked once, then harder. Ryan opened the door just enough to block the entrance. "You can't do this," I said, trying to stay calm. "I already did," he replied. "This house needs someone who can actually take care of it. My name is on the deed." He shrugged. Not for long. Melissa appeared behind him with her arms crossed. She looked at me as if I were an unwanted visitor instead of the man who had given them a place to live. "You should have signed the papers," she said. "This would have been easier for everyone. I asked to at least collect my medications and a few clothes." Ryan shook his head. "We'll mail whatever you need." Then he closed the door in my face. I sat on my porch for nearly an hour, unable to believe what had just happened. Neighbors slowed down as they drove past. A few looked confused, but nobody knew the truth. Finally, I called the sheriff's office. When the deputy arrived, Ryan confidently walked outside holding copies of the documents they had tried to make me sign. He claimed I had agreed to move out voluntarily and was simply refusing to leave them alone. The deputy listened carefully but explained that, without a court order or immediate proof, it was a civil matter. He advised me to contact my attorney. Watching the patrol car drive away was one of the loneliest moments of my life. For the first time since my wife died, I truly felt homeless. I spent that night in a small motel on the edge of town. I barely slept. Every memory of raising Ryan kept replaying in my mind. I wondered where I had gone wrong. Was this greed? Was someone manipulating him? Or had he been waiting for this opportunity all along? Early the next morning, my attorney called. "I've filed for an emergency hearing," he said. "Meet me at the courthouse." I handed him every document I had saved, the original deed, tax records, insurance papers, utility bills, and even security camera footage from a neighbor showing Ryan changing the locks while I was out. The judge reviewed everything far sooner than I expected. By late afternoon, the court issued an emergency order restoring my legal possession of the property and authorizing the sheriff to enforce it immediately. As we drove back to my house behind the sheriff's cruiser, my heart pounded harder than it ever had. Ryan was standing on the porch, smiling with complete confidence. He thought he had already won. He had no idea the sheriff wasn't coming to remove me. He was coming for him. Ryan's smile faded the second the sheriff stepped out of the cruiser and handed him the court order. He read the first page, then looked at me with panic in his eyes. "This has to be a mistake," he said. The sheriff remained calm. "It isn't. The court has confirmed that your father is the sole legal owner of this property. You and everyone living here must leave immediately." Ryan argued. Melissa cried. They insisted they had nowhere to go. For a moment, I almost gave in. Then I remembered standing outside my own front door with nowhere to sleep while they laughed inside the house my wife and I had spent 40 years building. My sympathy disappeared. The sheriff gave them time to gather their belongings. Watching them carry boxes to their car felt unreal. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't smiling. I was mourning the family I thought I had. Before leaving, Ryan stopped in front of me. "I only wanted what was going to be mine someday," he whispered. I looked him straight in the eye. "It would have been yours someday, because I loved you. But the day you chose greed over your father, you gave up far more than a house." He lowered his head and walked away without another word. A few weeks later, I updated my will. Most of my estate was placed into a trust for my grandchildren, ensuring no one could misuse it before they became adults. I also donated part of my savings to a local charity that helped senior citizens facing financial abuse. If my story could protect even one family from going through the same nightmare, then some good would come from all the pain. Months passed before Ryan finally reached out. His message wasn't about money. It wasn't about the house. It simply said, "Dad, I'm sorry." I stared at those two words for a long time. Forgiveness isn't something that happens in a single moment. Trust, once broken, doesn't magically return. I agreed to meet him at a small diner where we used to have breakfast when he was a boy. He cried before I did. He admitted Melissa had pushed him toward the plan, but he also accepted that every decision had been his own. He didn't ask for the house. He didn't ask for my inheritance. He only asked for one chance to rebuild our relationship. I told him rebuilding a family is like rebuilding a burned house. You don't start with the roof, you start by laying one honest brick at a time. Today, we still aren't the family we once were. Maybe we never will be. But my grandchildren know their grandfather didn't give up on doing what's right, and they also know that love should never require surrendering your dignity. Looking back, I realize the house was never the greatest thing I almost lost. It was my belief that blood alone guarantees loyalty. Sometimes the hardest lesson in life is that the people closest to you can hurt you the most. But protecting yourself doesn't mean you've stopped loving them, it means you've finally started respecting yourself. If you were standing in my shoes, would you have forgiven your son, or would you have walked away forever? Let me know in the comments because I'd truly like to hear your thoughts. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who believes family should be built on love, not greed. And if you want more unforgettable stories of betrayal, justice, and second chances, don't forget to subscribe to Family Betrayal. Because sometimes the strongest family isn't the one you're born into, it's the one you protect by refusing to let betrayal define your future.